we'll have a approval of the agenda. Any changes desired on the agenda? Additions, deletions?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move ahead with the agenda. We'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes. We'll go do a call to the public. Everybody's got interest in the agenda.
You do have, just so you're aware, Jen Crawford has joined on the Zoom.
Good morning, Jen.
Is there a hand raised?
She does not have her hand raised at this time.
Then we'll move off. There'll be a second opportunity for call to the public. We'll go to the first item, which is consider approving the Isabella County 2024 holiday schedule as presented.
Okay, so you have in your packet the schedule of 2024 holidays. It's pretty straightforward next year. I know in 2023, we had some of those Saturday, Sunday holidays that tend to wreak havoc on the calendar, but it was pretty straightforward for next year. The one thing you'll see when we get to later, the personnel policy changes. In the personnel policy, we did strike the Monday nearest June 19 for June 19th. It just happened, I think the first year we did it fell on a Sunday, so we observed it on the Monday nearest. The next time it actually fell on a Monday, so it was the Monday nearest. It wasn't until this year we go to do the holiday schedule that we realized Monday nearest is the wrong terminology. So Juneteenth will actually fall on a Wednesday in 2024. Reached out to the trial courts, which is, as you know, where it kind of originated here in the county, and June 19th on a Wednesday is when they presume to be observing it as well. So I thought it was important to put the actual date.
So if we in the future have it falling on a Saturday or Sunday, will it fall on that day then or
No, so
change the date?
policy actually, and when we get to that point, I'll get to that part of the agenda. I'll point that out there. Our policy already speaks to if a holiday falls on a Saturday or Sunday, how that will be handled. So there really wasn't any reason to put that in here to begin with.
Done.
But other than that, no other holidays snuck in here or additional days off as tradition.
I will move that we take the Isabella County 2024 holiday schedule to the work session for consideration.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Moves forward. Our next item. Consider approving the easement for electric facilities between Isabella County and Consumers Energy Company for the Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Project, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. So it looks like we're just moving the boundaries out of the easement. Is that at the request of
At the request of Consumers Energy. Yes, I have the first initial easements, copies of those in your packet that you already had approved February of last year, actually. But the easements were complete for the utility lines running parallel, if you will, across the property, but it didn't account for the lateral from the south to connect into existing power, which is kind of important. We're not gonna make our own power and stand alone, so we've got to connect. So as you can see, I think it's the very last page that has the map that shows where this 30-foot easement will be placed on the property. And the existing easement is on there. You can see that's already been granted.
so just going 15 foot out towards the facility?
Yep, it's a 30-foot wide easement, but basically 15 foot. There's a center line to the easement, and so it's technically 15 feet on each side of the center line.
I see the word casino in there. Is this for a future casino?
No, I'm pretty sure that's just the terminology or the name that they've given to that.
Okay,
To
on a
that area.
more
Or maybe-
serious note,
Who knows? That's a Consumers Energy denotation. So maybe that's the line that goes to the casino from there. I'm not sure.
I know we built the correctional facility, jail, right, seems like the middle of the property. And I know we were talking years down the road, long after I'm here, gone. but ability to maybe join up on other facilities out there. And I was told there's enough room, but I'm just thinking this utility line runs so far in the property. I can tell you, we had a problem at Coldwater when we did a grant one time where the consumers ran diagonally across the campground. And
Can't do anything.
we paid, it wasn't very much. I think it was like $5,000 to have a reconnect. It took that whole power line out, just reconnected elsewhere.
Routed.
Now, this one, they may not be able to drop half of it and still have connection. But it seems like this could be routed once you get to the pole on our property, routed right along the road if we ever need that frontage. It wouldn't be that costly, but it would give more usable property in the future.
Yeah.
Well, probably none of us will be here.
I appreciate the forward thinking though, right?
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, there's, well, you have to think about, I'm thinking about the detention pond too.
Oh, yeah.
And
a
if
lot of
that-
attention. Oh,
Yeah, if that was pushed out that way, but I do know that the architects on the project have guaranteed us over and over, there's plenty of room for expansion on that parcel should future boards and future administrators ever desire to.
Any questions?
well, then, hearing none.
Make the motion.
Yeah, sure. I move to take consideration for approving the easement for electrical facilities between Isabella County and Consumers Energy Company for the Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Project to our regular Board of Commissioners work session.
I will second that. All in favor? of Moving this to the work session, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. It moves forward. Our next item is consider approving on-call stipends for prosecuting attorney at a pay rate of $550 per week and $200 per federal holiday for fiscal year 2024. Barberry, thank you.
Morning.
Morning. Morning, sir.
So the basis for this request, I guess first and foremost, I want to indicate that, outside of the MIDC and the Public and Indigent Defense, getting a pretty significant increase in their salary and wage from 23, 2024. These requests wouldn't necessarily have come before the board. Their basis for the request is to acknowledge some of the differences in duties and obligations that our office has between public defense and the prosecutors. So what I attempted to do was look at our budget, see where there were some holes, and create some sort of an on-call stipend with the primary understanding that the prosecuting attorneys are on call nights, weekends, holidays, whereas the public defenders are not. Not to say that public defenders don't work weekends on occasion, but they're not required to, whereas our office is required to. We have to handle on-call warrants. We have to handle search warrants in the middle of the night and things of that nature. So if somebody gets arrested on Christmas Day for a felony or a domestic incident, it's our job to make sure that that a warrant is cut and that they're able to have an inter bond set or that protective conditions are put in place to protect the victim from having contact with the defendant. What I've done is I've looked at our budget this year, and in fiscal year 2023, we are currently operating 10% under budget for salary and wages, an additional 10% under budget in FICA, and retirement expenses and workers' compensation insurance. Now, the primary savings has come by way of just not having staff. It's not been a huge or a desired windfall, but it's just the fact that we've been short-staffed for so long. We haven't had an assistant prosecuting attorney in our office since March. And for about a month and a half or 2 months, we were short 2 attorneys. And there was a period of time where we were short 5 staff total. So that's the basis for the fiscal or the savings in fiscal year 23. It's anticipated that by October 1st, we still will not have an assistant prosecutor. I don't have anyone that's got any offer out to them today. We've got no prospects in the wing at this point. So we don't think that we'll have an assistant prosecutor starting October 1. So we anticipate that we'll continue to save some money on our budget in going into fiscal year 2024. We've also reduced our budget by hiring some new employees that came in at a start salary as opposed to the legacy cost of having a step 5 or step 6 in those positions prior. So overall, we've saved money in the last year. Frankly, almost every year I've been here in salary and wages, strictly by not having people in those seats. My proposal amounts to a total cost impact of $36,470. That's an approximation, but I believe that figure is accurate within 1 to 2%. And that includes all of our costs for benefits, 401k, FICA, taxes, etc. And currently we're having our 10% of our proposed budget creates about a $60,000 hole in our budget. If anyone's checked my math, I think that's correct, but I could be wrong. So essentially what I'm asking you to do is carry over the cost savings from 23 to 2024 to cover the on-call stipend for that position.
I know, I got an email and they 2 new standards for the public defender's office that are close to being adopted. One, standard 6, deals with workload in the local offices. Unfortunately, you don't have a big brother in Lansing looking over and protecting, the workload in your department. I see if you're running shorthanded, you still need to take care of business. And I have no problem with this only because it seems to be unfair. You can't hire somebody just to push it on to somebody else to do it without some kind of compensation. And I did read that other counties have similar programs in place for per diems for duty for the week and for the weekend. So I have no problem with this proposal, and I'm just wondering what this new standard 6, what that's going to do for the cost of the public defender's office and what additional stresses it's going to put on the attorneys that we have in our court system and the prosecuting attorney's office.
I want to add and be very clear of 2 things. One, the proposal that I'm asking for is not in perpetuity. I'm asking that this only be included in fiscal year 24. That this would be something that would be reevaluated, and everyone on staff is under the understanding that it may not be continued past that. So if we were to do a wage study and that wage study were to be completed, this could either be something that's incorporated in the classification of those positions, or it could just be discontinued outright. Depending on what's better for it. 2, I also want to make it very clear that this does not include any ability for me to obtain that stipend. When I ran for office, I knew what my position paid. I knew that my position was on call 365, 24/7. So this would not be something that I would be able to recoup costs on, but only my support staff.
Questions?
Couple things. One, given that other counties offer the stipend for the overtime and the on-call capability, I think that's only fair.
It's important to know, we, at least from my perspective, judges, their salaries are set by the state. So a judge in Macomb County tends to make the same amount of money as a judge in Isabella County. Whereas prosecutor salaries are set by the county. So there's 83 prosecutors and we all have different salaries. Likewise, they all have different stipends for different programs for their on-call.
So it's not everywhere, but there's several that do.
Smaller counties up north where there is only one prosecutor, no, to my knowledge, they don't receive any on-call.
Part of their salary.
I'm not positive.
Other counties do. So given that, I think it is fair that we can consider that. 2, the impact to our budget is minimal. I think that works. The fact that it's not part of, literally isn't part of a wage study. I think it's something separate from a wage study. I think that I personally believe that we should take this to the full board for their consideration and let the rest of the commissioners discuss it. So I'm in favor of moving this to our regular work section.
I am as well. I think it's a creative solution. I appreciate that. I would imagine nights, weekends, holidays, that's when a lot of the action comes, right? Probably being
Depends on the holiday.
probably not a rare occurrence, I don't imagine.
New Year's Eve and 4th of July tend to be a little bit more hectic.
Any other questions?
I think I would just like a little direction if the commissioners are supportive of this going forward in fiscal 24, and I appreciate the fiscal 24 only with the thought of the wage study. Are you thinking then of funding this of taking fund balance in the amount of $37,000-ish to fund this and increasing your revenues and your expenses in fiscal 24? Or are you keeping the budget amount the same and suggesting that PA Barbary within his fiscal 24 budget find the monies? I guess do you see the difference? Because
Yep.
affects fiscal 24, and it's one of the last things on the agenda. We're going to get to a few other things that is going to change that proposed budget before you adopt it. So we have an opportunity right now to either build it in that way, or I think it's important direction for PA Barbary as well too. And
I'm
maybe
thinking-
you're withdrawing your request if it's one way or another, but I think it's important we talk about that.
One thing, what happens if you get a qualified candidate for the open position of assistant prosecutor and you don't have the chance to have savings in next year's budget to cover that? I'm thinking we probably need to take a look at increasing revenues and expenses to cover it for this year. Otherwise, we're saying, we're giving another handicap and trying
You
to
are, yeah.
fill up his positions.
And I don't want, I think the county constituents would prefer that we have the people there that are gonna get the job done, and I think for $36,000, I think it's worth it.
We will, if approved by the board on Tuesday, then we'll build that into the final adopted budget that way. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
I will move taking the proposal for on-call stipends for prosecuting attorney at a pay rate of $550 per week and $200 per federal holiday for fiscal year 2024 to the work session.
Support.
Been moved and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It moves forward. The next item is consider approving reclassification of the chief assistant prosecuting attorney salary to a pay grade 18, and for this change to be incorporated and reflected in the fiscal year 2024 budget to be effective October 1st, 2023. Discussion, please.
So the proposal that I've made is in essence, born out of the fact that my chief assistant prosecutor is currently under the last drafted budget set to be paid the same as one of his subordinates. The reclassification is based on the fact that we've had prior instances where somebody is a subordinate and they are, or I should say, some of their supervisors were being paid less than a subordinate. We have reclassified them or given them some sort of an increase in salary to justify the fact that they're a supervisor. I set that at a 0.5 because I have, it's hard to quantify absent a wage study other than the simple fact that he is the supervisor of the subordinate that was being paid. So it's reflected in the staff report.
Questions?
I would just remind you, I think in the proposed budget, because these were involved in, in that page where we talk about personnel classifications, and it would have been highlighted yellow, right? Because it was approved to go forward. That was from your direction of saying we want parity with the public defender's office for standard 8. Melissa and I did the best we could and matched up those positions throughout. Public defender, prosecuting attorney, and trial court. And so that's how these two positions got put at the same level in the fiscal 24 budget. I just wanted to make you aware of that. It was trying to seek that parity, and your principal trial attorney is more than an assistant PA.
Sure.
You know, so really for parity, I think all we could do is put him up there with the chief, but it certainly created this issue. But I just wanted to give you the background on that.
Before that, there was a separation of the two positions.
They
One
were,
thing,
Correct.
they were both appointed positions.
They were on that appointed and elected scale where they're not on a grade and a step, or I'm sorry, appointed and elected. scale.
Chairman.
Commissioner Hubbard.
In this situation, I thoroughly understand the concept of trying to pay a subordinate the same as their supervisor. It puts those folks in a somewhat awkward position from just a pay scale. I understand that completely. I've been there. On the flip side of that, I think I've made it clear my position that I need a wage study. And this might be maybe a prime example of a situation that I was looking to solve this situation. And that's if we get a wage study and it shows that this person should have been paid this back at this point in time, then I think there should be some reciprocal pay brought to the table for that person. I really feel like I need to stick to this concept of I need a very objective basis to begin this process of considering wage increases.
As a general rule, though, would you agree that a supervisor should be
Oh.
paid more than a subordinate?
And that's why
That's
Why
really
I-
objective.
that's very objective, and I agree with that entirely. That's why I say I feel like I need to have the wage study first and then consider retroactive pay in light of that. And I understand that, but I need a firm basis to start this process. And with exclusive of that, I feel like once you start that process of picking and choosing and being objective, because you could be very objective about a lot of positions through the county that have been the previous wage study may have been misapplied or not applied correctly or not given their just due, if you will. So I prefer not to start that process and wait until the wage study. At least that's my opinion. And it's nothing against the folks, your people, not at all. It's not personal. I feel like I need to stick to the.
The only, I guess, the response that I would have to that is it seems as though the MIDC has essentially done a wage study for attorneys. Whereas, like I say, these requests don't come forward without that study, or I should say, without their standard aid increases. And we're not even in this position asking for these things, knowing the other things going on in the county financially. So I guess the concern I have is, what would your proposal be to tell my chief assistant that he should be paid the same as someone he's supervising?
I think that you have that opportunity with the wage study to have just what you said. It should be borne out in that wage study. It should come up loud and clear, big bold letters that this person should have been paid at this rate. And that's where I feel, again, I'm not talking for the entire, but I'm talking for me, that there should be retroactivity to that. So that's where
I know I've served on the board, I'm in my 9th year, and I kind of remember 2 or 3 other occasions over those years where we tweaked the study because of the same kind of situation, a supervisor and a subordinate were being paid the same or very close. And we made those adjustments.
I think that, a wage study is going to take time. We've got a situation here where we're expecting someone to supervise, coordinate the work of someone at the same pay grade. And I think any wage study that you find, no matter who does it, is going to find that person supervising needs to be paid more than people they're supervising. And I think we can look at those unique situations and not wait for a wage study on this particular case, with all due respect to Commissioner Embry's opinion. And I mean that.
Oh, I understand.
But I think this is kind of an unusual situation and one that we could address, just my opinion, but.
I don't want to put her on the spot, but I know Jen Crawford is on the Zoom, and this is kind of reminding me of after the study, after the last wage study. I feel like, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, your program managers at the Commission on Aging, I think it was the program managers, found themselves in a similar situation. Would you mind talking about that, or maybe talking about the timeline of when that change occurred?
Yeah, well, per the wage study, when it evaluated their positions, it actually was going to demote them down a grade, where our case managers were brought up a grade, and by them being demoted, then they would be making the same or less. I can't remember what it was, but the wage study actually wanted to decrease the pay that our managers were making, which was ridiculous in itself. But we were then, they were just redlined so that they didn't go down, and they still are a grade above those that they manage.
But then didn't we come back later on to increase those program manager grades? Didn't you come back and the board?
Gosh, I can't remember. I mean, that's terrible. I really honestly can't remember. I wonder, maybe we did bump them up one. I'll have to go back and look, and I apologize for I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I know the study was actually going to put them down.
I thought that there was something we brought back forward. I'll do a little research and see before next Tuesday if we can't find that.
Yeah, I can look too, and then I can send you what I find as well. I'll look back at my notes from that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other component to this is that the department's been short-staffed for as long as you've been here. And you're down 2 attorneys most of this year. No, I don't think, I wasn't trying to imply that at all. I know that was a joke. So, we need that department staffed. We need to do whatever we can to get it staffed, I think.
I think this warrants consideration by the full board. I know there might be some opposition to it, but I was thinking last meeting when Commissioner Sweeney said, there probably some clear-cut exceptions. I think this might be one of them, and I think it deserves consideration by the full board. With that, I will move the consideration of reclassification of the chief assistant prosecuting attorney's salary to a pay grade 18. And for this change to be incorporated, reflected in the fiscal year 2024 budget to be effective October 1st, 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to move this to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Moves to the work sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next item is consider adopting the recommended language revisions to policy 101, Isabella County Personnel Manual for non-represented employees, section F, holidays, section 8H, paid time off to take effect immediately upon adoption.
Okay. So if you go to this attachment, we did, of course, attach the personnel manual with the changes. So looking at page 101-12 of the policy, this is section F, holidays. And that's where we talked a little bit earlier. In this section, we're just striking Monday nearest. So that Juneteenth is just June 19th, and then you can see the section below that talks, that's what we were talking about, if a holiday occurs on a Saturday, Sunday, it's already in the policy, so just kind of striking what we so very recently updated by making the change in the policy, but we didn't
Catch it.
catch that at the time, so. So the only other changes now at this point are in section H, just go forward a couple of pages to 101-15. And all of the changes are in section 2, accumulation of PTO hours. And you may remember the last time that this policy was updated, we changed a lot of things in terms of PTO. We changed the payout of excess PTO hours to October versus January with the revision we did a year ago. And again, we didn't really have the forethought about how that would play out administratively. We had a discussion at both of the recent department head meetings about it. A couple months ago, we had the discussion, I think in July. We thought that, we came out of there of how this would work, moving PTO payouts to October versus January, making the rate that we pay those out effective September 30 instead of December 31. No increased cost to do that. That's why we moved it at the time. But what we didn't change was that accumulation cap in January. Right? Every January, you can take over 225.5 hours, and that's a cap. We didn't change that in policy, and talking through that at department head meeting, kind of thought we had it, and then some more questions came about. So at the August department head meeting, we had an even more invigorating conversation about, well, how does this play out moving forward? So instead of deleting old language or original language of how things had happened in the past, keeping that old language so that we can look back and go, oh yeah, it used to be January. Oh, this used to be the payout. So we're keeping that language, but in that second paragraph, what we added last year was, beginning with the county's fiscal year 2024, the PTO payout will occur annually in October. Compensation for the PTO payouts will then be based on the employee's rate of pay as of September 30. So what we're suggesting be added now is the following language. PTO payouts will still be limited to a maximum of 112.58 hours for non-exempt employees and 120.12 hours for exempt employees. Those are the same, they're just restated from the paragraph above, not changing. However, the accumulation cap of 225.5 hours will be lifted for January 2024. And that's because in October, we're buying them down to the 225 based on the maximum payout that they can get, actually. And then in January, we're cutting them back to 225 again. Without normally, from your payout, you would have a year's time to be able to earn and use up your time before it was cut down again. So the conversation really led to the best thing that could happen is just one time in 2024 calendar year, we'll lift that cap in January. So then it follows going forward. The accumulation cap will be attached at the beginning of the county's fiscal year rather than at the beginning of the calendar year.
Tied together.
Yeah, so payout in October, in a few weeks here. No accumulation cap in January, but the accumulation cap again the following October 24th. Lots of time to use your time. I know in the few years past, we had done like an extra payout. We didn't feel there was any need to do an extra payout if we adjust that cap. Gives them the time. So then the last couple sentences here that we're suggesting to add are beyond. See, we're thinking ahead now. Beyond January 2024, the amount carried forward into a new fiscal year, so October, shall be limited to 225.5. If at the end of a fiscal year, an employee has excess hours above the 225.5 hours of unused PTO time accumulated, the employee shall be compensated for these hours in October of the succeeding fiscal year. So it's really the same language from above. We're just changing calendar year to fiscal year. But again, leaving all that language in there so someone can follow what had happened and what's to happen going forward. Those of you who were present for that conversation.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you, but please, if there's.
Go ahead.
I got one question. I thought that when we discussed it, we said that effective in October, we were gonna have the one-time bump. And like, we're still gonna have employees, I think, that have too much in October, when we get our payout coming up, that they could lose time there. And I thought we were switching that to October based on the discussion.
It is.
Carry over one.
Yeah, the
One
1
year.
year.
One
would be
full
carried
year.
over starting October, not
No, I think that,
not
I thought that's,
January. What
The
I
way
heard
it's
was
worded?
January.
it might just be the way it's worded then, because that is my understanding,
Yeah.
that October at 2:25.
So that example I showed you on paper after the meeting where I'd have, for example, I have 400 hours to build up. I'd give my 225.5 would go into my bank for the year. I get paid out my 120, 20 whatever,
You're in October,
in October.
Yep.
you're, I think, no, because you're, the accumulation cap is not there for this October. So what's there for this October are those payout caps. 112 if you're exempt, saying that wrong, I think I'm saying that. 120 if you're exempt, 112 if you're non-exempt. You don't look, we're not taking you back down to 225 this October. We're just, anyone over that, we're paying out the, yeah, the 120, 112, yes.
But what if there is
If
overage?
they had extra hours. we
So
could
those
save
are gonna
those.
carry
in
Right.
my
They're
Well,
carried
there's
over.
no accumulation cap in January.
Right.
So
it
you'll be
carries on
rolling
over.
through January with those extra hours.
Over. So
The one time.
Rollover. that
One time.
happens,
Yep.
Not over that. not January.
Of 24.
No, the rollover would happen in October of 23 then. Right. Because if my example is I have 400 hours, 225 goes in my bank, I have 175 left. I get paid out my 120, that gives me 55 hours left. I can put 37 and a half into my wellness bank at max. That leaves me with change, 12, 13, 14 hours. I'm not losing that in October, it's actually rolling over. So the rollover happens in October, not January.
Right.
You're not looking-
We don't call it a rollover, we call it accumulation cap. So,
There's no real accumulation cap. that year.
right, and
But it's a
we're lifting that, but we just, yeah.
Have it till
Yeah.
October the next year. Use it below the cap. Or you're ready to lose.
But think of it this way.
So the relevance of January allowing our cap to be
Yeah,
higher.
it's irrelevant.
Nothing.
What's relevant is that
Because it
there's
happens
no,
in
there's
October.
no cap, right? There's no cap for
But
that
the way,
15 months.
the way policy read,
That follows.
the cap was still happening in January, so we had to put in language that lifted that cap
That's-
and then reinstated the cap at the fiscal year beginning instead of calendar year beginning. So
that's all
if
good for that.
nothing else, this conversation is recorded. We can go.
I thought the amendment to the policy was gonna just push it to October rather than.
It will, but not until 24,
Right, yeah.
not this October. Yeah. Yeah, good discussion to make sure we're all clear.
Right.
No. Chairman's okay.
Department heads. My issue is this, obviously this is confusing for us, okay? I'm hoping that you can convey this so that everybody next year, when we get to October, they're not all of a sudden panicking, going, well, what happened to running it as a calendar year versus a fiscal year? That's gonna be so that people may come, may have issue with that, I'm hoping not.
It's been pretty clear. We just, I mean, the language that I've been using is October 23, there's a payout. Anytime over that rolls over and you have a payout again in October 24, and if you haven't used your overtime by then, you're on your own. There's gonna be an accumulation cap.
Okay, so as long as we, I get it, the whole concept behind all of this was so that we didn't penalize anybody by changing. I don't want to penalize them, I don't want to feel like they got penalized, so, you know, once that can be communicated effectively, correctly, then we're all good. Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion, comments, questions?
That's the bulk of the changes that we're looking at in the current policy. You know, one thing, I don't know, my apologies, I don't know how I didn't make it on the agenda, and we can certainly just have the discussion. We talked about, we haven't acted in this regard, but remember, we just approved policy, you just approved policy that gave new hires holidays, and they don't have to wait 6 months to use their PTO. We were gonna continue discussion about providing holidays to part-time employees.
We haven't brought that back up.
It didn't make the agenda. Maybe we should just put it on the next
Yeah, I think
agenda.
we'd have to look at how many employees we're talking about and what it would cost.
Financial impact. Yeah, I think we definitely need to get that on next. We talked about it. We said we
Yeah.
would, so.
Yeah, exactly. I know it affects certain departments, and I know certain departments, we budget for a part-timer to work, whether they're using PTO, whether they're a holiday, whether they're just regular hours, right? So there certainly is a difference between departments that we budget that way and we don't. MRF was I know a big difference because Director Borton actually utilizes those employees to work the holidays when his full-timers are off. And so I know in MRF there was going to be a significant maybe financial impact. So my apologies for not having that ready this round, but you want to continue the discussion clearly, so we'll put that on the.
If I remember correctly,
12.
I asked Director Borton to bring that financial information to us. So you can.
Good,
remind
so
him of
we'll,
that.
yeah.
I asked if he would bring that information.
So we'll put that discussion then on the September 12th finance agenda. Yep, and we'll have cost analysis for us.
I'd like to move, taking consideration for adopting the recommended language revisions to policy 101 for Isabella County Personnel Manual for non-represented employees, section F, holidays, and section H, paid time off. Take effect immediately upon adoption to our regular work session.
I'll support that. So it's moved and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Always same sign. It moves forward. Next item is consider approving the request to hire an accounts payable clerk, accountant technician 3 in the office administration office at a grade 8, step 2 at $19.35 per hour.
Yeah, so
So this is not a reclassification, it's just starting at a higher step than we have in a grade study.
that is correct. It's starting at a higher step. The accounts payable, or formerly account technician 3, accounts payable clerk is a grade 8. And our scale is attached to my staff report. So you can see, our scale, we have a higher or a start rate for an 8 of 1768. That tops out as an 8, you top out after 5 years at 2185. So I put that scale in there so you can see. I'm requesting a year 2 higher. So the difference would be about $1.67 per hour, starting wage at 1935. As you're very aware of the recent turnover in administration, and we do have a lot of staff that are now hired, rebuilding our team. This individual that I would like to hire for accounts payable clerk actually came to us in a temporary capacity through Robert Half. The person covered the executive assistant position duties and accounts payable duties while those positions were open, still covering accounts payable duties and still transferring some of the information that they learned during that training to the executive assistant, Brian Chess, who's now in that position. So it was kind of a tough transition because there was another candidate that did end up getting the executive that did end up accepting the executive assistant position. But I can say unequivocally the attitude of the individual to train the person in that position. The attitude has been phenomenal. This individual can handle the duties, and that's very critical to us because there's already some cross training involved in there. And because I look at choosing another candidate or bringing someone else in at this point, and the knowledge base that this individual has already amassed is very valuable. See her as a great addition to the team, phenomenal attitude, and to me, that is worth coming to you to request more than a start rate.
I know the philosophy behind that is when you start somebody at a first step, you're taking a new hire without a lot of experience and increasing the wage as they gain that experience. And so if you're able to hire somebody that's already ready to do the job and is capable of doing the job, it warrants possible consideration. The only thing I would say, and I don't know if there's ever been any discussion. I know when I was Parks and Recreation Director, there was a time when the treasurer's office did all of this. We probably had a county administrator.
Instead of administrator.
I'd like,
Yep.
just like to have the conversation going on as we look down the future and we're looking at challenges in our budget. Is there any opportunity to look at other avenues of doing accounts payable and some of these in conjunction with the treasurer's office? I know.
He's
Just-
looking away, but I think we're both open to.
Just
those
open for
discussions.
discussion to see if there's a way of being able to provide good service at lesser cost. If there's not, there's not.
Always open.
As is your administrator controller.
Yeah.
You know, if it makes better sense for the county to have an administrator instead of controller and to have the general ledger at the treasurer's office, that is something
Yeah.
I'm
and
very
that
much
way,
on board with.
if there's any duplication of service, you know, say that. Commissioner Embry?
In my 7 months, I've seen our board come to our county administrator and continue to add substantial work and big projects. And I personally don't see that stopping anytime soon. And my hope is that it doesn't. So in order for her to be effective in what we're asking of her, I think that's something that I feel like we should consider, is moving some of those responsibilities away to allow her to do her job the way we'd like for her to do it. I'm not saying you're not doing it now. I'm just saying that we're going to continue to pile on, if you will. I don't wish to slow our momentum. I want to keep us moving forward. So if that particular aspect of her current position could be moved away effectively, it still saves the taxpayer money and allow her to continue to do her job well with the help of MEDOC, I think that would be wonderful. Now, second, my question is, who is she, or who's this person answering to? Who is the direct supervisor?
Accounts payable
Yeah,
clerk,
is it
that's myself.
Now, does she answer to her at all? Is she underneath?
Absolutely.
Right? So I would like your opinion of this situation and how you feel it can improve what you guys do in administration.
Me on the spot.
I'm sorry. You're in that job now.
I concur. We had this discussion prior to the staff report and everything coming forward, and this individual, I mean, at this time, because we have 4 new staff and we're still training everyone, and everyone's kind of helped picking up everything else. This individual is, it's not so much what she is doing, it's the fact that she can do it and that she can just pick up these 4 different positions, a piece of something, or even help in a payroll and AP and accounting maybe here or there. And I think she's just proven that she can do it all in some capacity. So
I guess that was one of my next questions.
Mhm.
Is she cross trainable? Because
She's
I'm
cross training
Yeah,
She's cross-training the other
yeah,
three new hires.
she's currently cross-training and she's also cross-trainable, so somebody that could fill in the event, God forbid, a situation happens. She's that person that has that potential to do that quickly and fall into an additional responsibility with little or no real training then.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think we would be here asking for this if you know our budget mind and how conservative we are. And at first thought, it was considering with everything going on as well, as far as I know, this is different than a wage classification, but
Mm.
it's, at first it was a kind of, we cannot possibly, and.
You were fighting it.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the budget came on and it's absolutely not. But
You see the need.
I see the potential and what she's currently doing, for the whole office.
Checks all my boxes then.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I would add that I think our whole team is supportive of this. The other new hires didn't have experience in what they're doing, didn't have, I should say, recent experience in what they're doing to be able to step in and just hit the ground running. She does.
Great.
I think it's my turn to make the motion. I'll move to take the request to hire an accounts payable clerk, accountant technician 3, and administration office at a grade 8, step 2, at $19.35 per hour to the work session. Support. It's been moved and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The next item, consider accepting, placing on file the fiscal year 2023 third quarter financial report as presented.
Alright, so this is a unique report for 11 months ending.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that.
I like it. You know, I like it.
So you know exactly what happened. We forgot the third quarter report. We brought budget amendments forward.
Hmm.
But things got a little crazy in the admin, and so we neglected to bring forth the third quarter ending 6/30, right? So that would have been ending June 30. So Melissa and I talked about it and we said, well, we could do the 6/30, which is pretty outdated. We could do a July 31, which why we're almost to the end of August. So we made the decision to just run it through August 24th, last Thursday. Last Thursday, the day that this got done, to go on the packets for Friday for Tuesday. So it's kind of hot off the press, and we felt maybe more valuable, more meaningful that way, because why sit here and look at a couple month old numbers? So we do have a very unique 11-month ending report, which is fine. So this quarterly report shows the original budget for the year, shows our amended budget where we're at currently. Remember, we will have some more budget amendments coming forward, probably your last meeting of September. So that's budget. We've got a column for actual, and then you're over under, right? If you're, this is revenues on the front page. So if you're in parentheses, you're under. We're never, rarely at over 100% this time, but you can see how we break this out. Taxes are at the top, always this time of year. I suppose this is a little better than doing a 6/30, because at 6/30 the summer tax bills aren't even out yet, so that number is woefully usually like a point something. You can see already 22% of taxes received. None of the wind turbine revenue as of this reporting. I haven't paid that yet. One thing that we do for total revenues, you can see down below, we're at 60%, which is pretty damn scary with 5 weeks to go here. But you can see we take property tax out of that, and we're at just over 92%. And we do that again because that we know the property taxes don't even start coming in until July. They're going to keep coming in well past fiscal year end, and then actually get booked back. So not to fear Commissioner Embry,
No.
these guys, it's old hat. They're used to hearing it.
I get the, if you do, you have 11 months times, well, what, about a little over 8% per month. So it should be coming in. So that 92.65 is pretty right on the money. Yeah,
Excellent.
got that. Okay.
Excellent. I love your shortcuts like that. Licenses and permits are a little shy of budget, but I believe, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, in the budget amendment that we're gonna bring forward, will there be, I feel like in our current budget, we built up escrow fees for wind that maybe aren't there. So is that one of the things we're
Yes.
kind of,
Yep.
we'll pull those out of the budget then, right? We've got equal revenues, equal expenses built in for the wind activity, and it's just not, it's not there anymore in 23. We budgeted for it in case, I think, so we'll reverse that out in a budget amendment. It'll more align, if you will, that percentage, because it's kind of over inflated or
Right now.
underinflated.
In this case, yeah.
Federal and state revenues are on track. And that is elevated so much from normal years because of that $8 million of ARPA that we recognized in the current year. Remember the rest of those lost revenues, we recognize that. We said we'll take our $10 million of lost revenue out of ARPA. So we actually brought an amendment forward to you for that. So we're on track there. Charges for services does lag a little bit. You know, we're below where we should be for that time of year, but they'll still be coming in, and they'll come in after September, and they'll get pushed back into the appropriate year.
Okay.
Fines and forfeitures, my understanding is we did have a large forfeiture that is pushing that up. So we're already at 125% of budget. Interest and rents, I think, is the big story. We're at 245% for the year. That is not because we've raised anyone's rent, right? That's because of what interest is doing and what the market's done from budget time estimate last year to now.
Again, we're talking about under promising or delivering.
Yeah, conservative budgeting, right? And luckily the interest is now a revenue line again in our budget.
Good.
Other revenues, absolutely lagging by a little bit, but the amounts we're talking are 70,000 are not going to impact this budget. We're at 0% for transfer in from delinquent tax revolving. We will not need that transfer in. So the budget amendment that we bring forth in September will have that taken out, if you will, or remove that from our general fund revenues. Commissary and other. Melissa, help me. I know we looked at that too, and I can't remember why that is over by the 29,310.
That was additional monies from the veterans that we set aside. We would
It's not commissary.
no, we would appropriate for the last multiple years, appropriate monies to a separate fund, the veterans and like soldiers and sailors, where Veterans Affairs Director Ian Welch said, why not just build it into general fund? That way at the end of the year, if we spend the full $30,000 of the appropriation, great. If we don't, it falls back into fund balance, because every year we're appropriated to another fund, and then we have to do a transfer back of what's not spent, then appropriate again or don't, because puts it all in one spot.
So we're still
Yes,
funding
still
the
funding it.
benefit. It's
Still
just
built in his
accounting
budget.
for it differently. So this extra revenue was what was left in the fund that we absorbed back into general fund
Yes.
from years of appropriating to it. It wasn't getting all used. We keep appropriating. So now this is absorbing that back in.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And it does say commissary other. My mind was just stuck on commissary. The CPL fund, that is concealed pistol licenses, and that helps pay for part of a position in the clerk's office. Our Register of Deeds Automation Fund, in our current year, we do have it budgeted. I know in 24 we don't, but in 23 we do, and that transfer usually happens towards the end of the year. Indirect costs, that is just under 97%, and we have a new story coming from MIDC. Now that they've got a few years under their belt, they're thinking of making some changes, and instead of just giving us our appropriation to run our public defender's office, they are now thinking they might do that on a reimbursement basis. I don't like where this story's headed, but already this year they've played a game with, I guess, indirect costs, where they said your indirect costs are this rate. Happens to be, we use a 10% of salaries and benefits as our 10% or as our indirect cost rate for MIDC. They allow us to do that, and it's more lucrative for the county than using our cost plan, to be honest. So we utilize that 10% rate. And in the past, they had just given that to us, but now they're turning that into a function of wages. So each quarter, I believe, when we report wages and benefits, they'll send us, if you will, 10% of that as indirect costs. So little games coming from Lansing, unfortunately, but more to come on that, I'm sure. But 97% still doing very well, but I wouldn't expect to see any more in 2023.
No, in the 23, that's still the 23,000 that's under. That's
Yeah,
just
so-
because we are waiting for the fourth quarter.
Hmm.
We don't know what those fourth quarter wages are gonna be for MIDC, because it's not just 100,000 divided by 4 quarters. It's now actual wages, and if they had turnover or wages were not utilized, that's less. So we have to wait for that to. Normally, I'd have these appropriations at this point done, but or everything.
Maybe we'll look to see if we have to remove some of this from our next budget amendment, maybe.
We may have to.
I think that, yep. We can maybe estimate, give ourselves a little cushion. Look at those other quarters.
You know, we-
Ever changing target. Okay, so expenditures, Board of Commissioners, you're doing fantastically, but that's because, your administrator hasn't done an RFP for a wage study or the Board of Commissioners AV project. So all of those monies are still sitting in there, 150 for the AV project, 75 for the wage study. That's sitting in your Board of Commissioner department. They don't roll over, but they were ARPA dollars. And so we're still kind of earmarking those for those purposes. So they're not built into the 24 budget. But once we have those RFPs out there, I'll know the cost. We'll bring it forward in a budget amendment in 24. We'll use ARPA dollars for it, so that it will be a net
In and
zero
out.
impact.
Yeah.
Everything on the judicial side is doing extremely well, just under 82% total. And when you look through these or the details of it, it really comes down to lapsed wages, just like prosecuting attorney Barbary was saying in his department. Administration is running pretty tight on par. A lot of that has to do with the contractual services from Maynard Casterison that we're utilizing right now. Information management is the only one in general government you're going to see over budget, and that has to do with the phone system that we put in early in the fiscal year, last December, I think it was. The cost overran, and that will be addressed in the budget amendment that we bring forward next time. Other departments are performing really, really well. I would call out Central Services Department. That's our postage. All of our postage runs through there. It looks tight, although towards the end of the year, we'll do a transfer from some of the other funds. I think 12,000 comes from delinquent tax, 10,000. Tried most. So that will help, but we'll take a look at that too. And if we need to build up any more, that'll be in that final budget amendment. Public safety, also similar to judicial, I think lapsed wages there are carrying the budgets. You see an overage in Marine Patrol, but please don't let that amongst the 8,400,000 other expenses, don't let that little $5,000 issue cause you any concern. What happens there is in the budget, we predict how much dollars might be used by Marine Patrol. We budget it all as one big number. And then as those deputies perform those duties and we pay, we see, oh, we've spent a little more. So it's handled with a pretty simple budget amendment.
I have a question on public safety. We've got the sheriff's dollar amount and road patrol. Why aren't the deputies that are on road patrol budgeted under road patrol?
I think it's just a function because we get a grant for road patrol. That's the secondary road patrol grant. We keep it in a different department so that we can run reports just on the deputies that are performing those duties, so that when we send the reports to Office of Highway Safety, we don't have to take these out. They're already, we just run a
Already
report
out.
for that department. We're not
Could you
taking
do
it
it?
out of a total.
Road patrol contractual, or just adding a line?
We sure can.
So what are,
Well, road patrol is the contractual part, so we could just add road patrol and in parentheses put contractual after this. Well, but it's not contractual,
It's a grant, you said.
Grant.
Right.
and it's not funded in total either,
Partial,
partially funded. We could call it secondary road patrol.
yeah.
Would that, maybe that
Mhm,
would,
That might kind of delineate the two a little
Yeah.
better, but
yeah.
minor change. Yeah.
Mhm. And I think it's important to spend a little time in this section too. You know, we always talk about public safety wages, talk about mandated versus non-mandated. It's pretty clear to see how much of these dollars are devoted to corrections. How much is sheriff? Now, remember, sheriff isn't just deputies in there, that's admin too, right? Sheriff and under sheriff and Jen Wilson.
Well, everybody in
and
the
a piece
office.
of that. Everybody else performing really, really well on budget. Community development, economic development is the next category. Performing very well, just under 75%. You see in public works is our drain at large and the landfill. Drain at large is right up there close to 100% because that's a one-time, it's paid in
Excellent.
September or something. Yeah, it's already paid one time, done for the year. Landfill expenses are low, but I do feel like we probably have an invoice for some more sampling coming before the end of September. Yep.
Okay.
Health and welfare. I mentioned, when we were at a meeting last week, I mentioned that Melissa had brought to my attention the PA2 funds, the substance abuse funds, that always from the monies we get for the convention and facilities tax from the state, always half of that, always 50% of that we directed to Mid-State, our substance use disorder agency. And sometimes before we got the monies from the state, Mid-State had a letter to us saying, you're gonna get this and 50% is ours. And I'm not sure if something sunset in the law or if there was a new law, but that changed recently to 40%. So it is only 40% that we now send to Mid-State. So I don't think maybe there is a little bit more coming for the current year. I'm not sure if we're
Yeah,
4 quarters
there's
paid.
one more. No, there's one more. And I always go and double check before we pay that we received the EFT. Okay. And that's how I noticed it wasn't exactly half. It was
Mhm.
only about 40, or I guess it
Yeah,
wasn't double, yes, however way you look at it.
Not sure what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a one time or if it's going forward or if they're gonna change it, but I do know in fiscal year 2024, it's budgeted at the full 50%. So once we come to 2024, that's a little, I don't think it's worth trying to change now, or if they change that.
It'll be,
Yeah.
it'll be manna for our first budget amendment. in 24.
There you go. So the other 60% of those PA2 funds go where?
General fund.
Do it. Okay.
General fund revenue. I know that's something we talked about before, and I know before I went to my administrators conference this spring, we had talked about what do other counties do? And I asked a room full of about 30, 35 other county administrators, and every one of them, the rest of the PA2 funds are absorbed in the general fund revenue. They don't earmark it for any other purpose.
Okay.
It is
So we should-
common practice.
That's something we should look into. A little further.
Be thinking about, I think.
Realize we're short on money, but still, if it's dedicated to there, should be dedicated to that.
Should
Well,
be.
we are moving ahead on setting up a permanent fund with the community foundation for this purpose, so.
Maybe that's what should get
Could
rolled into.
certainly roll it into that if we
Even just the 10%,
so
right?
chose, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mhm.
like something we should look into, as opposed to just going to the general fund and not benefiting people who really need it.
We don't roll it in until we know we don't need it. Right now, we need it.
You know,
Unfortunately.
we
Yeah.
do need it, but.
Yeah. we'll wait for that.
Okay,
But the intent there was for
Yeah.
substance abuse.
correct. And that's where I think it should go.
Mhm.
Then the onus is on us to figure out how to make up that.
How
money.
to do it.
It's our job.
Exactly.
Anyway,
Okay, continuing down, health and welfare, medical examiner, they just lag in billings. Mental health and district health allocation, those are what they are, right? So those are allocated. Veterans Affairs, I think the amount looks a little shy just because we budgeted more grant expenditures this year.
It has to go, deals with the $30,000 that we are not
Oh, that's
sending.
That's right.
That's, I think
Part
we've
of it.
spent maybe 5,000 of that so far this year. And so that's kind of full circle of, we might not spend that 30. So at the end of the year, it'll fall back into fund balance, but next year we will appropriate that 30, or not appropriate, put 30 in that line item, and whatever's spent, instead of doing a transfer from the other fund at the end of the year.
Transfers out. They are what they are. Transfers out for correctional facility. Very much on par with budget in fiscal 23. 58% probably because we had such a lag in getting going on the project. I think we wouldn't have lagged 6 weeks. We probably would be well spent or overspent.
that's a big call.
So those are your expenditures for general fund sitting at just under 82%.
Which is about right where they should be.
That is, yes, very comfortable. Very comfortable. The last page shows some of our major funds and where they're sitting, revenue and expenditure wise. No worries here really. The MERF revenues are only at 70% on this report. That's a little concerning. Those do lag. But I do think commodity prices are down. Now, we have been looking at that and analyzing. They do have some fund balance. So we don't think it's a situation where general fund's gonna have to give extra to it before.
So we don't need to cover.
We don't believe so. I
Okay.
do not believe so at this time.
Alright.
Inspections doing well at over 100% revenues. And all of their expenditures, as you can see, are really in line. Your departments do a really good job of that. Are there any questions on General fund revenues, expenditures, other funds.
Everything under 92.
Any indicate, probably too early to tell on taxes, anything seem out of the ordinary, they're just coming in now like normal. The wind.
Oh, did they?
Good. They're a sure thing, they're usually a sure bet.
Commissioner Emery, would you like to make a motion unless there's more discussion or questions?
Nope, everybody good?
Good.
Okay. Move to take up consideration for approving or accepting and placing on file the fiscal 2023 third quarter financial report as presented. to
I'll
our
support
record.
that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, same sign. No. It passes. It moves over. Sorry, next. Session. We got a 10-year financial forecast. You know, I've been keeping these to see how it changes from time to time.
It. I wouldn't doubt it. It's actually looking a little better.
I thought I was the only
Not
one.
by
that-
much.
I thought I was the only one that did that. Got my
You
little
might have two there.
comparison from-
The two are just.
That's just one.
Yes, I do date them. Yes, ma'am, I do.
Good.
This is, we're on to number what, 5 now?
And so, as long as it didn't change. Thanks, Melissa.
I think we have two September 12th issues that are different, so probably the date wasn't changed when we received it. I'm thinking that was the date, but
Wow, your memory is better than mine.
Much, and these numbers are
it
terrible.
had been last year, I would think.
It wasn't this year.
No,
These are terrible, but they're less terrible.
Yeah, they are less terrible.
Thank you.
It didn't get
terrible.
worse.
It didn't get
Worse
worse.
here.
More worse, sir.
More worse. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
That one's.
Worse.
So I will jump ahead to the fiscal 24 proposed budget discussion. Let's talk about one thing we're gonna build into that budget before your adoption, because it is built into the forecast and it's a pretty big thing and it makes a big difference. Treasurer Pickens reached out after the proposed budget was, put out in the world for review. Thank you, Steve, for taking time to do that. He does look out for us. I want you guys to know that. And he reached out to say, hey, those expenditures you're gonna have on the sheriff's office and correctional facility project really ought to be built into the budget. We built in the bond payment that we're gonna have to make in our fiscal year. And what I said to you is, oh, we know we're gonna have expenses for that project. We know we've got fund balance committed. When we have those expenditures, we'll just bring it forward with the budget amendment, which is the one way to do it. But best practice, I'm reminded, is to build it into the budget.
line
You
item.
know it's coming. You can
Mhm.
anticipate,
But have an actual line item. It's.
have
draw
that,
down
and then the line item is a transfer out, right?
Yeah.
Line items are already in there. It's the same line item that we
That we will
that
be
we
using.
will
to
be
transfer the
using to
bond
It's
transfer
just, it
out.
already exists, just put the amount in there.
Yeah,
need to build it up.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I see
as
what you're
we know, we borrowed 41.5 million from the USDA. It's a $48-ish million project, right? So we know we're responsible for the difference. We know we've already paid some. We know the board already has some fund balance committed. We have a cash flow on the project that we can estimate each month what our percentage is gonna be. So in fiscal 24, our percentage estimated of the correctional facility project construction is gonna be 3.631130. So that's $3,631,130. So what we would propose in your final adopted budget, we'll build that into revenue. Well, no, we won't build it into revenues. We build it into use of fund balance, right? So right now your use of fund balance is about 1.5 million. We're gonna add this 3.6. So your fund balance is gonna become more 5.1. That's your final document. And then in expenditures, we're gonna build in $3.6 million of expenditures in the general fund transfers out to the construction fund. So that's gonna elevate your budget again, right? We talked about the sheriff's tower project, elevating revenues and expenditures, right? This is no different and even to a greater tune. So I have not done the math on what that will make your general fund, but it's gonna be 30, holy moly, 3, 4, 35 point,
The expenditures,
yeah,
32.
3,
Oh,
5, 6, 37.1 maybe, because they'll be right now they're about 32.5 for expenditures.
that's included in there.
But you're gonna add 3.6,
That-
correct?
Oh, it's included in the
Yeah, yeah,
forecast,
It's
all right.
not in our proposed budget, but it's
In the
we
forecast.
had it built into the forecast. We've always, not always, but as of the last couple of forecasts, we did not build it into the fiscal year 24 budget.
Budget.
So now they'll be both.
Now they will match.
They'll
Yes.
be reflected.
Okay,
Correct.
so just wanted to say that back to the forecast. I didn't want you to look at that and say, wait, our transfers out are not 5.4 million. But they will be.
I like that makes us more accurate. Or-
It does,
doing.
it does. And I think to Treasurer Pickens' point, the board is considering some other major borrowings on some other big projects, right? If we've committed some monies to the correctional facility. We look at our fund balance. Well,
How much is the total we commit?
yes,
I agree.
yes,
That
exactly,
Allows us to see exactly how big our piles are and aren't.
exactly. Because I can run a balance sheet and so can he, but you guys generally don't do that, right?
Yeah.
Right now, as we sit here, you have committed to the sheriff's office and correctional facility of your fund balance committed, this board, $3,450,228, $3,450,228. As we sit here, that's committed of fund balance. You also still, as we sit here, have just over 2.6 million dedicated for the bond anticipation note, which is old news. And we'll be working to remove that from the fund balance designation. So the 3.4 million you have committed doesn't cover the 3.6, but some of that will happen in the current year. We'll have to come back to the board to recommit additional dollars beyond the current 3.4. But you didn't use all of the 2.6, so that's fantastic, and that'll get reabsorbed back into general fund balance.
The 2.6 was to pay off the ban.
But didn't we, no, I think the 3.4 was the windmill money, because didn't we say it was the 2.3 from the 100% year and the 1.1 from another year? The amount of their committed, I think we took 2 years of wind turbine revenue, and that's what totaled. The ban was more a function of the amount we had left to pay off on it, I think.
I like that. Better reflect what we actually have in fund balance.
Yeah.
That we, take out what we've already said we're gonna use it for, take it out, so we know
Yes.
what our
Yes.
little pile we have left.
And it tells a better picture for those projects you're considering in the future beyond the correctional facility project, right? Can you really afford it? Okay, so back to the forecast. The first column amended budget does match our current amended fiscal 23. You see that transfer in from delinquent tax revolving of 200,000 because that's still in our amended budget for the current year. As we talked about the budget amendment coming forward, we'll take that out, and as you can see in our forecast, we just removed that going forward. No more of that for right now. right now. Reduce the MRF appropriation. We have the MRF appropriation falling off in fiscal 27. That's why you see our expenditures, our transfer out going from 1.8 to 1.5, if you will.
So
So,
like a note here, Murph fall off.
yep, it does. That is incorporated. We do, one of the things you've been very clear is important to you to build in more funding for capital projects and facilities and in information systems as well.
Right.
So in the capital outlay line, if you follow that across, now in 2024, that amount is beefed up because of the HVAC project, because of the ARPA dollars. No, we removed, because that's what his 10-year capital improvement plan.
That's what he asked for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I think
That's
that's
what
what
he
he asked
requested.
for
Yeah.
in that plan. The next year, well, that year and beyond, we still have the 250,000 for additional capital and 50,000 for additional IT capital starting in 2025 and beyond.
So we-
Remember, in 24, we reduced that by
Back to 100,
100,000.
so we're gonna put it back. Yeah, okay,
Yep,
good. That was one
Yep,
of my
so
questions.
in the
Okay.
forecast, that's back. That was a one-time, let's try to balance
Squeeze it
the
a little.
budget. Yes, he's got all those other projects going on, maybe doesn't need it all. So that's built back in, 2024 does not include the JCI project or the ARPA revenues for that until the board would approve that.
Yeah, that's not, the capital outlay is not facilities, the 2.4, that's the sheriff's equipment.
That's his
I was gonna
tower.
say,
Oh, that's his
I've-
tower?
yes, that's
Sheriff's
it's built
tower?
into an equipment line item, but
There's a
Tower
3
project.
million extra.
but it washes with the revenue. If you look at the intergovernmental
Yeah, it's up
in
at
fiscal
7
year
million.
23, it goes from 4.8 million to 7.2. There's 3.2 million built in of revenue that will be coming back in reimbursement, but expenditure that will be going out in capital outlay. That's not facilities.
Sure.
So reimbursement from the sheriff tower project.
Yes, yep,
Thank you.
inflating both revenues and expenditures.
Mhm.
Something else that, Melissa's been so thoughtful with the forecast to build this in fiscal 25. Once sheriff is in the new facility, building in an increase for salary and operations,
Oh, good.
just
Yeah, I wondered
Yes.
about that.
Yeah.
15 and 10, 15% salary. I don't know if it might look different, but 15 in salaries, 10 in operations. And then that perpetuates every year going
Also,
forward.
it continues to move on. It's not
Yes.
just a one and
Yeah.
done.
Not 15 and 10 every year, but the first year
Right.
in 25,
And then
and then whatever,
salary.
2 or 3% we have on operations.
So you
5
contain- Yeah, what was your accelerator?
1.5% on operations. So
Is that a
that'll
little
go.
low, or is that?
That was what I know that we're gonna talk about that as well, the accelerators that we have on some things, salaries, operations, insurance, that's at the end of this.
Oh,
To get to that of, do we still want to see those same accelerators? Is that what you gentlemen want to see? So
Okay.
we'll get to that.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to
No,
hand up
no,
the-
No,
Okay.
we're almost there. I think the last thing one of the last things I want to point out is, and that transfers out. You can see in 2024, that this, in the forecast, it does have that 3.6 million. That is our portion of the correctional facility project. And Melissa knows it won't be done in 24, so she also built in just over 400,000 in fiscal 25, which would be the balance of our portion on the project. So that's why you see that transfers out elevated a little bit in 2025. Now, the MERS negative 10% year, they had we have that built in here as far as we know we use the GovInvest tool. We built, in that negative 10% year. So these numbers are even more conservative than the annual valuation we got from MERS. Because MERS smooths things, and this kind of took that out a little bit, so we are trying to be conservative with that too, although they need to not have another negative year,
Can't afford to.
would be really, really
Really,
good.
that's really making it tough.
Now, we can see from those recent valuations that we're getting, it's just pushing down the
Pushes it up,
road.
Yeah.
Yep, where that tails off. Where our big bumps are.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can see, I think the last one showed us 19 million in the hole after 10 years, and this one's only 14.
I know, like, it's not better.
We just drown a little slower.
Thanks.
That's
A
less bad.
slower,
Yeah.
painful death.
I was gonna say, you just, what it does, it makes me think, well, I was thinking, all I gotta do is work, we gotta work really hard for like 4 years, and then, whoo, all's good, and then you realize, oh, man, we gotta work hard for 1, 2, 6,
Yeah.
8, 9, 10.
Years.
Like, oof.
So we've got the fund balance on reserve, then we have the fund balance. Those are dollars that aren't all available, correct, to the general fund?
Correct.
So when do we hit the wall that we're gonna really start having cash flow and financial problems? Is it
2026 or 2027? Which one?
Oh, it will be 2026. We'll have cash flow problems.
We'll start towards the end of the fiscal year, we'll start seeing some real tightening of, okay.
Yeah.
so if we're gonna have cash flow problems at that time, we probably need to start thinking about what is the amount of interest we're gonna have to start paying to be able to
Cover.
cover our bills.
We're gonna have to
That's
borrow,
not
right?
factored in here yet, right?
Correct.
So, right,
Yeah, we'll
so that's gotta,
pay. Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars in interest, $100,000 in interest, I'm sure, to borrow, if we had to borrow for cash flow.
so hypothetically, if you started in 2027, we started borrowing like 2 million
Mhm.
a year. We'd have to pay interest on that moving forward for how many years? So we need to start looking at how far out we're gonna be paying, borrowing $2 to $3 million a year, and how much is that gonna cost us?
And it may be more than 2 million, because by 26, what we have, we do have 2 million set aside right now for cash flow. We're spending that down, right? So
That's the problem.
we need that
That would be the
plus
problem.
additional.
Right, so maybe 3. That's the end,
4.
3 to 4. So we need to start factoring that into our calculations and our forecasts. As a worst case scenario, so that we'll act accurately reflecting the future as best we can without the millage.
But in for the worst, all right?
So you need to start now, so it's not a knee jerk reaction. It needs to be thought out in a very, very judicial way.
There any questions about what's in here, what's not, what's?
Do you want to look at the percentages? Or,
Let's look at those accelerators.
so for salaries, we had built in, starting with, I believe, 2024, 2.5 of just on salaries, like a wage increase, the COLA. And then every alternating year, it went 2, 2.5, 2, 2.5, currently all the way through 2032. I know with our recent 3 that we're proposing in this budget, I didn't know if we wanted to adjust those.
Plus a 9% increase in healthcare.
At a
Yes,
minimum.
and that is in 2024. So now, since that is in there, those healthcare costs right now are set to increase 5% from 2024's already 9%. 5% increase each year on health.
Oh, that's already built. in.
Yep,
Separate.
into this one. Yep,
Separate from salaries and benefits.
yes, yep.
And we can do that now because salaries and benefits are separated in the ordinance.
Well done.
Yes.
And because it should be, it really should be. Shouldn't be all lumped.
So do we, I guess, a conversation of the 2 and 2.5 that are built in over the next 10 years, alternating 2 to 2.5. Do we want to keep that? Do we want to discuss that further?
Economic outlook. I seem to just feel like that's low. I really do. I mean, I think if we just look at inflation, we even tie it close to the inflationary rate.
We don't know if the economy is gonna get back on track,
Is it-
inflation's gonna go down.
I would, again,
Maybe we should look at 3 and
I'm thinking 3.5 at least.
Or
Yeah.
even 3 for a few years and then,
I even go 3.5 and then 3 and then 2.5.
we can always adjust it later
I-
if things get rosier.
Yeah, I'm thinking 3.5 for the next 3 years and then 3 for 1 or 2. Because this is this situation we're in is gonna be minimum 10 years. Maybe in that time, the economy does turn around to where we start to see some benefit from it, but we don't,
Okay.
again, under promise, over deliver. I'd rather be conservative, really. Put out there exactly. At least that's my opinion.
that built in
You guys okay with that? The idea of
Yes.
doing 3.5 for 3 and then
Yep.
3 for a
for
couple,
3 years and 3 for
2
1 to 2 years.
say 2 years and then
2.5, the remaining.
do 2.5 the
Okay.
remaining. And that's still pretty optimistic in my opinion.
Operations is currently at 1.5% every year increase.
You know, even if we go for the millage and we get the millage, we're still gonna have to be really careful on our budget.
Oh,
Very judicious.
I believe that has been the plan, even that's in the back of my mind as well.
Yeah, there's no surplus built
There's
into that
no
village.
extra, yeah. Let's
There's no
We
bonus.
just have to say,
keep us afloat.
sorry, if you want. Adjust your line items within, but
That's what we're gonna have to work on.
keep it
Adjusting
at
line
1.5
items
at this
within,
point.
moving piles
Oh,
around to cover
okay.
everything.
I see.
What was that again? What was the increase? 1.5?
1.5 on operations, yes.
Man, that's seems low. 2, minimum 2%. Yeah, 1.5 seems like we're low balling it.
Look at.
Not that, I'm not trying to say anything negative, just saying.
No,
it just
no,
seems-
that's where we started. That's where we had a starting. Right, so if we look at just facilities, for fiscal year 24, they're at 358,000 in operations. Moving up to the next year, 1.5, it goes to 363,000. So you're talking $5,000 difference from 1 year.
Yeah.
That's in operations, that's
That's like a-
office supplies, that's,
that's what I would say too.
2,
I don't know.
2, and we'll adjust it.
There we go.
later if we have to.
It's considered. I hate-
Yeah, 1.5 does
I-
seem
I hate,
like
ca-
we're just trying to make the forecast work, right?
I hate trying to catch them in a hole in game. We're in a hole already. I don't want to dig out a shovel and start.
But we don't want to realize we need a shovel 5 years from now, too, right? If
Yeah.
we're gonna need a shovel in 5 years.
Better
let's
start
know
shoveling
about it
now.
Get the shovels from the ground, baby. Here we go.
Or the cookies.
I guess I got one in the bag.
Dude,
Thank you for reminding me.
You
still good.
I don't know. I'm gonna find out. I'm sorry.
That one part
Wrapped
turned
up pretty
white,
good.
did it?
Yeah, should be good.
That one part didn't turn white, did it?
We'll find out. in a minute. I'm
Okay.
pulling- I will see what I got here. Yeah, sorry.
And then the 5% on health insurance is built in. Every year,
okay.
bigger ones. The other ones are kind of a function of whatever. The
It's hard-
salaries
hard
go up,
to-
yeah,
That's a hard one to gauge because
right.
it jumps around. This
Sure.
year, we're looking at 9%. Some years we've seen very small increases in that. Just depends on your utilization. And that
See that we don't know.
you don't.
But
know.
that variable is it for a smaller organization as we have, boy, that just really, as I'm getting into this and trying to understand, boy, that variable is just all over the place.
Mhm.
I realize it might be cyclical to a certain extent, but I don't think that's a function of an accurate function that we can rely on.
Even at CMU where they have a couple thousand employees, that varies quite a bit
Even
from
there,
year to
that
year.
much?
Yeah, it's not a consistent.
Is that?
And
because
it's
of-
just driven by utilization, high claims sometimes. We'll drive that up.
And if we could tell what year that was gonna happen, we'd know what years to self-insure and what years to buy a plan off the shelf, right?
Right,
It
right.
If we had a
would be-
crystal ball.
Yeah,
But we don't, so.
that's interesting to know that they're just as volatile with more employees. Because it's all based on when those large claims hit and it's the 7-year itch or
Right,
whatever it is.
Right, it may, their experience may be a little less volatile, but it is still volatile. It's still, I know there's years where we're kind of surprised, but
It's jumping, so different than what I come from. I come from, it's pretty consistent. I mean, it really is. 5,000-6,000 employees. Never hardly gets used and it just kind of stays the same. It's weird how from industry to industry, it's different. Huh. I think it's new to me. Something I've
The big unknown in this 10-year forecast is what's gonna happen with the wage study.
Yes.
I know we had, what, 1.2 million last time, it affected our,
General fund.
General fund. was it that much
A
or?
million for just general fund.
So do we have it?
Yes.
So again, we should have a conversation about that, including it now. I'm thinking 1.5.
You've exceeded that 19 million.
Yeah, they're, way to go. I love your.
Just,
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, my 1.5 includes retroactivity.
Right.
I want, again, I'm committed to taking care of the folks that we should have taken care of. So I'm stepping out on that limb.
The only thing I keep thinking is, we know we're gonna have in 26 a cash flow problem. We need to move forward aggressively on this millage. And if that millage fails, we're gonna have some real shock and awe on the next year's budget. Because I think we have to start making those cuts immediately.
And I think we talked about this a little bit, the millage group discussion. I
This
really-
afternoon,
Yeah, I think once we've decided exactly what we're gonna do to kick this off, I think that group needs to change focus to what we should do in the event that it doesn't go through. I think we need to start having real conversations in advance so that we can sort of flesh all of this out, put it all out on the table and take our time and be diligent in the things that we're gonna have to make adjustments to.
Yeah, I think that has to be part of the message when you're asking for the ballot question is
Right.
what's gonna give if it doesn't,
Mhm.
if it's not successful.
Agreed.
That has to be part of it.
Yes, and I think the more transparent we are, the more informed our taxpayers will be.
yeah, I think at one time, and it came from a MAC conference, we talked about looking at what is absolutely mandated. We absolutely
Start
have
there.
to do and what's outside of that.
As opposed to going from here and start cutting back, start with what's mandated and what can we afford and start to prioritize those items. How you guys want to approach it, but it can go either way.
This conversation
Well,
never
good news to
ends
say.
well, does it? Yeah.
we know we have challenges but we'll meet them. One way or another, we're gonna meet them.
You're sitting in that seat. and That's why you're sitting in that seat. That's why you're sitting in that seat. Why I'm sitting in this seat and why this young lady chose to sit in that seat.
It wasn't a choice.
Oh, it wasn't a choice.
They twisted her.
So you're gonna present this at the meeting just as a piece of information again?
FYI.
Yeah,
No need to take action on it now?
correct.
Okay.
I guess any comments from the gallery at this point on our 10-year forecast? Anything we may be missing or? Karen, why am I not surprised?
Sure.
You just want to hear. Right here.
Why does it always be? No, my only thing is, what I wanted to say is that it looks insurmountable. when you look at the numbers and the figures, but if you look around the room, we're all smarter than that. And if we work together, I think we can do it. And there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, we have done greater things than this before, and I think we can continue to do that. But we're just gonna have to all work together, and I think we're gonna have to throw out the playbook. County government isn't going to be from now forward what county government was before. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe we can reach more people and be more available to people in a different way. But I think we're just gonna have to look at different ways that we can work together to deliver the same service, but do it in a more efficient way.
Sweeney
In a
always
way
says,
that's
be more nimble.
more
Yes.
appealing to employees, because right now we're having a problem getting employees, and is there a way that we can, how can we work to keep the employees that we have? How can we invest in those employees? We have some very smart people here. Let's do whatever we can to keep those people.
Just a quick comment on the messaging as this conversation is happening in the committee. I'm thinking of the insurance committee discussions and some of the fear that created. And so if the millage committee starts talking about what happens if we don't get a millage, I can see a pattern with that kind of fear response from staff. And so I think just clear communication and messaging for department heads on how to communicate those things. Just knowing, again, with what happened with the insurance committee, kind of maybe getting on that on the front end with millage discussion.
I think just for you guys, FYI, I think I've reiterated a couple of times that salaries and benefits are off the table for me. We're not gonna put the onus on the employees. I don't think that's right. I think if we were elected to do a job and we need to do the job and not put it on you guys to fix it for us, in my opinion. So from my standpoint, I have no desire whatsoever to entertain anything to do with cutting insurance or benefits or anything of that. That's off the table.
My thought is, I really don't want to involve the employees. The employees are gonna be giving us input. I think this is a county board of commissioners. I think there's some really negatives that could come out if we have some really discussion. Some departments, I mean, to me, it's very clear cut where we can make some cuts that gonna to take care of a $2.5 million deficit. I think we just, continue. We know we have good people that are working real hard, and when the hard decisions come down, it's gonna come down on the county board and administration with the input of the employees.
Madam Administrator, I know I've been coming regularly to your staff meetings. And to me, I feel like that is a perfect segue if it looks like them was just not going through. Start having conversations at those meetings.
So,
I think that needs to be, when you
and
start,
we do need to craft a good, solid message to the voters of this county, and that's why we need to have some professional help. So,
but I think by going to the department heads and having them involved in this conversation right from the get-go, I think it's gonna be very important in terms of not only communication to the county, folks who live in the county, but to the folks that the workforce. Or any buy-in from the get-go.
all right, moving on to the next thing, we're looking at the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget discussion. Guess the first question I have is, you've got a budget, we're gonna have a public hearing. If the board takes actions on some of these, like prosecutor's proposal, we do that as an amendment after the fact, or do?
So I would suggest mentioning it at the public hearing so that, everyone is on board with it. I'll be mentioning the 3.6 million specifically that will be built in to revenues and to use of fund balance and expenditures for our portion of the sheriff's office and correctional facility project. And I've got to think about how this will fall on the agenda. This will come after prosecuting attorney Barbary's items. So we'll know if those have passed. So if those passed, I'll talk about building those costs into the fiscal 24 budget. I think you could do that during that agenda item as well. The public hearing on the budget is at the 7 PM meeting, as I think about it now. So that actually won't happen after
But
you
you'll have the
decide.
flavor of the discussion.
I'll have the flavor, yeah, and be able to say that we can build that 36,000, 37,000 in to what gets adopted. We can mention that at the public hearing. The only other person that's contacted me about the budget is Clerk Lux. She just recently got back from a conference where her and all of the clerks, all the county clerks across the state were notified by the state of Michigan that they're using different paper now for their vital records copies. So the state dictates what they use and the clerks have to use that. As I met with Mindy and Shelley, I think they said current price was around $150 a box and it was going up to like $1,500 a box. And they have to use this paper. It's the paper with the state seal. It's got the county seal. You get the birth, death, marriage printed. It's going to be on this paper. So her fees are going up. And so to counter that, she would like to recommend fee increases for her department. So, in the budget document, those fee pages, one of them specific to the clerk. So she's specifically asking birth, death, and marriage certified copies, currently $15 first copy, $5 additional copy. She's asking to increase to $20 for first copy, $10 additional copy. Senior citizens 65 and over, currently $7 for the first copy, $5 for each additional. She's asking for an increase to $10 for first copy and $7 for each additional. Waiving the 3-day waiting period for a marriage license. Currently that costs $20. She's asking to increase to $30. A DBA license, currently $20. Currently $10, asking for $20. These are small amounts to begin with. Passport photos, currently $15, increasing to $20. So
They seem reasonable.
they seem very reasonable. So we'll update
Not
that.
like
fee
anybody's
schedule.
bank.
I think that's the best way to do that, is just talk about those changes at the public hearing. The whole board is aware. I'll talk about them Tuesday night on the agenda.
So you're gonna
But
adjust that in
also-
this budget.
Well, the proposed would go as is, right?
This will
This
stay as
proposed
Just
will
say
stay.
as is.
And these
if
are gonna
they're
be
talking at the
adjustments
It will
public hearing.
change from the proposed to the adopted that's
On the
going to
19th.
go on the 19th.
There you go.
So,
Yep, the proposed won't change from what it is. We'll just
But the
verbally
adopted
talk
will-
about it and
Yes,
then you'll have
It
it.
will
Yeah.
reflect
adopted.
all of those things we're talking about.
Any other major changes from their last presentation? Anybody quite had questions?
The only contacts I've had. I don't know if anybody's reached out to you for clarification or anything.
I had a couple departments just update their fees, not update their fees, the language of in their fees. Just written a little
clarify?
different, yep, a little more
Excellent.
clarification, but not numbers wise.
All right,
Excellent.
next item is the invoice list discussion. I've gone through personally, I've gone through the few bills that are exceeding the $5,000 threshold, plus the body of the information that comes with it. And I really don't have any questions. I see Game Time is Herrick Park new equipment. That's not dealing with any kind of grants or anything, right? It's just buying the equipment outright, or did you get a grant?
Actually, there's a tribal 2% grant for $50,000, and then there was a fall sale with matching dollars, so we also got an 80,000, give or take, grant from Game Time. So we're able to get assistance with $130,000 worth of funds for a new playground. A
Nice.
2 to 5 year old and 5 to 12-year-old. And.
So two
zip
separate ones,
lines.
two different ones?
Two structures with actually a separated zip line and then the core in place foundation. So that project we got quite a bit of support on actually. And it was built into the budget already too. So
Where's this going again?
Herrick Recreation.
Herrick
area,
Recreation area?
the north
Oh, yeah, yep.
area of that.
Oh, sweet.
campground.
So you're replacing one of my last playgrounds.
It was time to go, unfortunately.
You said it.
Oh,
first, okay? You said it first.
Landlords and all that.
Yes.
A lot of that, a lot of that stuff is metal and it gets so hot that it's not even usable most of the day.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know it's with Florida, yeah.
This is gonna be a very nice playground for that park. So it's gonna be a really nice amenity for the community.
That's on the north side, right?
Yeah.
What do you do with the old butter tree that's elevated for the water tower? You taking that
That's
down?
actually staying, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's gonna
That's nice.
make sure that it can stay there.
All right, I feel better. So are there questions on any of the significant bills that are on the first sheet or any of the background information?
I did not have
I
it.
have none.
Nope, sir. Pretty straightforward there for me.
So we'll just move these on to the work session for presentation, discussion. Announcements. We have any announcements or?
Did somebody want to mention anything about?
Nope.
Pardon me? Anything about Commissioner,
The only thing I would ask for, you still on something?
oh, no, I was just saying, didn't know. if you wanted to mention anything
I'll
about
fill you
Commissioner-
in after the meeting.
Okay.
How he's doing.
The other thing I was gonna bring up is, I know we still have remote working, and I know a while ago when we first came off the pandemic and we were starting to open up, I had 2 or 3 people bend my ear because they came into the county building and they couldn't get service. And I know we're a service organization. And I think we're still doing some remote working. I think we need to have a policy if we're gonna have this. So we know when remote work is to the best interest of the county. And we don't have that. I kind of asked around, a lot of counties have gone away from remote work. I find on the internet, there's pluses and minuses. I suspect most of our departments are back here in the department, in their offices working, but I guess I'd like to know who still uses the remote working and
Yeah.
whether or not we need to have that policy.
We do have a policy, correct? Maybe we just need to
We
look
do
at
have
Need to revisit it, I think.
Policy, yes.
Because if-
Yeah, we actually, it was adopted by the board pre-COVID, like it was almost like foreseeing COVID coming. It was,
just pre-COVID.
yeah, I want to say 2019,
Mhm.
maybe 18.
I was on the board back then. I guess my
Yeah.
memory's going.
We do, well, remote work, I think, was a different, it brought up a different image in 2019 to what it does today, I think, you know.
different conversation.
Yeah. So we'll dust off the policy.
I'd
We'll-
send it out
we'll-
for review.
We'll
I think
send it out,
it's
yeah.
very important, as you said, right from the beginning, we're a service organization. And that needs to be priority one for our constituents, folks who live here in this county. is that we're providing the kind of service they expect us to.
And some of our departments are a lot smaller and they were, well, remotely, there may not be anybody present to help, so.
Okay.
Chairman, have you had that feedback recently?
No, I have
Okay.
not recently.
Thank you.
We'll do a call to the public.
I'll say
Got
just
it.
really quick,
Hand up.
remote work, and how I use it in my office. It's not a scheduled function necessarily. I find some advantages to it at times because I have work that I have to do, that I'm pushing paper, I'm reading, I'm working on studies, I'm working on a GIS project currently for dispatch. That sometimes not being bothered by staff enables me to work more efficiently, get more of that work done from my home. I live a bike ride away, maybe a 10-minute walk from here. My staff always knows if something's on fire, they can call me and I can come in quickly. I do tend to use it. I haven't probably used it in maybe 2 or 3 weeks now, because we're understaffed in the department. But I do find it to be a very efficient function for some positions, not all, but some positions. There is extreme efficiencies that are provided. I never leave my office not providing service. Never. It's never not providing service. We're always providing service at some level throughout. So for us to think outside the box a little, as we are discussing today, to be able to still utilize remote activity in some instances, I think is vital to our operations today and moving forward.
If there's value to it, my concern is if there's value to it, let's make sure it's on paper so that we can defend it to the public.
Yeah.
And I know as Parks and Recreation Director, I balance a lot of things. I never worked remotely. Only because a lot of the records I needed were in my office, as I worked on grants and other things in policy, but I'm just saying, we just, make sure the policy is reviewed and that it does have value.
You always want to have service supersede the value. That service to the public should always exceed anything we do
live in a
outside.
much more digital age too today, no offense, Mr. Delsey, but when you were here,
You have.
Sure.
You're older.
There is, I'm tied, right? When I'm at home working, I'm physically tied into my computer at my desk, right? Directly. I can see all my service, I can see all the GIS data, I can see dispatch center activities, I can see all our building inspection activity, our plan review functions, inspector schedules throughout. So we can see all of that and still operate in that fashion. But again, I will preface that all and say some jobs can do it, and I think there are others.
Whether there's one-on-one contact needed.
Yeah,
We can't let that happen.
yeah, support staff at the window, can't have them remote, somebody's got to still go to the window and take the application in and process.
Chairman Jalasowski, what was the
Nothing.
phrase? What was that
I
again?
just said- I just-
I'll tell you what, before I get slammed again, I'm gonna adjourn this.
I'm going to hear. This meeting is adjourned. Correct. The love. Ooh, my good.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. How'd we do for times?